to a little town at the base of the Sierra Nevada mountains in California called Tehachapi. And I remember this day distinctly because I had wanted to read this first account, a primary reading source. Let me back up. My name is Becky with A Better Way to Homeschool, and I just did a video like this out on Instagram, and I thought, you know what, I need to share this out there on YouTube too, because this is one of the secrets of making homeschooling fun. And it's inspired because I've been sharing about homeschooling tips on Instagram, and somebody reached out to me and asked me, Becky, how do you make learning fun? And she told me a little bit about her kids, and it reminded me of this story. My kids and I were in the process of studying Native Americans, and we were going through tribe by tribe, look through the lens of where did they live, what kinds of houses they lived in, what did they eat, that kind of stuff. We were doing a year-long survey of Native Americans. And one of the teachers that was in, at the time, the charter school that we belonged to or were educating through, she is one of those, she's like Miss Frizzle from the Magic School Bus. She's just this, so she handed me a book and said, this is all about the tribes that live here in the place that you're living, Tehachapi. And I thought, well, that'll be a really great read aloud time. So picture this. I'm sitting in the house, it's time for history, and I want to read from this very boring looking book about the Native American tribe that lived right where we were living at the time. My boys were like 4, 6, 7, 11, something like that. And the boys were jumping all over the place. They were jumping on the sofas, they were jumping on the pillows, they were jumping on each other, and I just couldn't get their attention. And I was like, dudes, we just need to read this story and then we'll be done with history. But they still wouldn't have it. And then I remembered something. I was like, I know how to get them. And then I got creative. I pulled like a random rabbit out of the air. I was like, hey, you guys want to see if we can, I wonder if you can make ketchup cookies. Now, I did that for a reason. When you've got boys, you got to throw a little shock and awe in the things that you do, right? If it's got a little sense of danger or this, wild frontier type feeling, the boys tend to be all in. So I randomly chose ketchup cookies. So we did a quick search, and there was a recipe for ketchup cookies, and it actually had decent reviews, and I thought, they seem fast. So we made a batch of ketchup cookies, and I loaded the boys in the car. I snuck that book with me into the car, and we drove 10 minutes away, parked the car, and right when we got there, I pretended to remember right in that moment. And I was like, you know what? The teacher, Mrs. Smith, told me that there's a rock over here that the Native Americans that used to live right here on the mountain, they would grind their flour from acorns somewhere right over here. Let's see if we can find the grinding stone. You think I had them? Oh yeah, those boys, because it was do you think you can find, sounds like, I wonder if you can beat your brother to find, it sounded like a competition, and they were all in. So the boys ran, they found the stone because it was right there. I mean, I pointed them. You can lead a horse to drink, and you can point boys towards learning. It's amazing if you know how to do it. So I pointed them towards the rock. They ran, they found the rock. Oh, Mom, we found it. It's a big old boulder with bowl-shaped divots in where the Native American women would sit there and they would grind the acorns into flour. So the boys immediately start looking around under the oak trees, and they're gathering acorns, and they start sitting there and they grind these acorns into flour. It's a magic. How do you become a fun homeschool parent? Well, you pay attention to your surroundings. Pay attention to where you live, to the things that people are telling you, so that, and log it in a way that you're thinking, someday we might do something with this for homeschool. Pay attention to your surroundings, pay attention to the movies that people are talking about, to the books that they're saying that they're reading. keep a little creativity journal. And then when things don't go the way that you planned, quickly look into your creativity bucket and see if anything else will work. So that day in my living room, my boys were not going to sit still for read aloud time. So instead, I'm like, this is not working. Becky, you need to get out of the house. The boys are going to kill each other inside the house. And that just didn't work for me. I love my boys. So I pull the ketchup cookies out of the hat. Like, can we make ketchup cookies? And there we are on the mountain. The boys are grinding the stones. I let them do that for a long time. Half an hour, 40 minutes. It was a long time. I was just enjoying the mountain air, listening to the squirrels. There's a lot of squirrels up there, and watching the big bushy tail squirrels. And after a little while, the boys start to get bored of doing the grinding. So I say, would you guys like a ketchup cookie? So they all sit down on the rock that they were just grinding, just like the Native American people that lived right there in the past. They're eating their ketchup cookie, and that's when I reached into my bag and I pulled out the book, and we did a very short read aloud where I read firsthand accounts of the Native Americans that lived right there. And don't you think the boys paid attention? They're sitting on the grinding rock. They had just ground acorns in the same exact place as the tribe, and now they're listening to the story. And I hooked them because I gave them food. The good news to the reader that reached out to me, how do you be a fun homeschool parent, is that you don't have to be a fun homeschool parent every day. You don't even need to be a fun homeschool parent with creative ideas every week. You can try and attempt to do something fun at least once a month, and it will add up. Now, some of you are very creative and you try to do fun things all the time. I tried to do fun type school stuff often, once a week, something like that. A lot of the things that we did were hands-on. So my boys would tell you that we did a lot of fun schooling, but it was hard for me. I grew up imagining standing in front of a whiteboard and teaching to kids that were sitting perfectly still and receiving my words of wisdom and then becoming excellently educated. And then I gave birth to 5 very busy boys, and it just didn't turn out that way. So tap into your own creativity. Pay attention to your surroundings. Gather places that you think you can go. I'm going to encourage you, down in the descriptions, there is a free class that I just redid. It's called the 3 Stages of Homeschool. And the reason I want you to grab a seat is it will unlock your ability to see where your kids are right now in homeschooling. There's a lot of noise out there. And one of my clients was telling me, you know what, Becky, the reason I like your voice is that you're speaking to the heart of why we homeschool. And it's so good. But your voice is the quietest voice out there. And so it's really easy to get skipped over because everybody else is talking about grade level and curriculum and unit studies and how long people should be teaching in a day. And consistently, you're talking about things like routines and emotions and character training and those pillars of homeschooling. So the Masterclass is going to set you up so that when you look at your kids, there's only 3 stages. You're going to be able to identify which stage they're in and then target their learning in a very appropriate way so that that stage can be as fun and full and adventurous as possible without burdening yourself or your children with unnecessary paper. School does not equal pencil across paper. School equals being excited to learn, falling in love with reading, and becoming an excellent communicator by the time you graduate high school. It has nothing to do with how many essays you write or math problems you can complete in 32 minutes or any of that other stuff. So purpose to be a fun mom, a fun dad. Collect places to go, collect activities. Out on Pinterest, I would create idea boards. And when I knew that we were going to be approaching a subject like Native Americans or the Civil War or space or weather or anything, fill in the blank. I would create a board on Pinterest, and then I would do searches and I would add things to it. But you don't want to just add curriculum. When I looked for things for Native Americans, I looked for music, I looked for arts and crafts, I looked for food, I looked for dances, places that we could go, read aloud type stories, movies that we could watch. And that's what I would have put on my Pinterest boards, so that on any day, if I had a lesson that wasn't working, the first thing I would do is I'd send the boys outside to play. I'd set a timer and I'd say, you guys have 15 minutes on your markets at go. Now, the first 7 times they complained about it, but then they got really good at just bolting out the door because they knew they could get a lot done in 15 minutes. So they would go play. And then I would search through my boards and I would search through my memories and see if I could tap into something that would be more hands-on, more engaging. If your kids aren't learning, if school's not working, if all you're doing is arguing as you're trying to educate your children, then something needs to change. And it's usually not your child. It's usually you that needs to pivot and approach learning from a different perspective, from a different angle, in a different way. Be creative, and that's where you will tap in and you will find the secret sauce to making learning more fun and hands-on and engaging for your kids. And it's magic. Just like those ketchup cookies and the grinding stone were for my own boys, that's what unlocked their buy-in so that they would actually listen to the history of the Native American people that lived right where we were living. They wouldn't receive, they couldn't receive, they didn't want the story at home in our living room, but they were hungry for it after they had stood in the same places that those Native Americans had stood. And it's extremely powerful. Again, you don't have to do it all the time, but be creative. Our favorite homeschool memories in 25 years of homeschool have nothing to do with tests and reading comprehension and lesson 17 of any book. They have nothing to do with that. They're things like grinding acorns on the grinding stone, traveling through part of Lewis and Clark's actual journey and looking for the waterfalls along this one stretch of the Columbia River. That was amazing. We had read the book Undaunted Courage as a read aloud together, at least part of it, and then we mapped out part of our journey. We went to the Camp Disappointment, and what's the other one called? Fort something, Clatsop, I think. And we went and we got to go to the different places that they did, and it just brings learning to life. We made a Viking ship out of paper mache and toothpicks and duct tape. The boys loved it. And we did that because they weren't connecting to the lesson on paper. We did pocket type learning books, and I would go to the library and I would look for books on arts and crafts that would help bring things to life. What else did we do? We built an Egyptian shaduf, which is the contraption that the Egyptians would use to water their crops. Super fun. One of my kids made a Roman soldier costume because he was totally excited to be a history professor someday. And he wanted a tool chest filled with costumes that he could wear when he was introducing a new period of history. He chose not to be a history professor. He's actually a machinist now. And that costume, we thought we made it in an adult size. That's your, he's my oldest son. And you think your 12 and 13-year-olds are really big until they actually turn into an adult. He can't even get his left leg into that thing, but it's still a fun project. We made PowerPoint presentations. We did art projects. We hosted a Peloponnesian feast and invited friends, and then the kids would stand up and share the parts of history that they were learning. Learning is not the ultimate goal. Learning information is not the ultimate goal, but how you share that information with people around you and how you experience what you're learning, right? It's how you learn that's most important, not what you learn. I think that's it. So yes, we made ketchup cookies. Yes, we ditched the lesson at home, put it in the car, brought it with us up the mountain, and the boys were a captivated audience. And you can do these types of things too. Just pay attention to what's going on around you so that when things, my mom would say, hit the fan, when things hit the fan, you can let the kids out to play for a bit, take a break, and then think through it. How can I approach this differently? Do I need to approach it today? Or can I spend a day or two thinking of a better way to approach this that fits with my kids in the stage that they're at so that they actually receive this information? And what do I want the end result to be, right? Do you want it to be a piece of paper, or do you want it to be this amazing memory that you had with your kids? That was always our goal, was to connect with our kids and to make sure that what they were learning lined up with our master homeschool goals. So anyway, be creative with your kids. Grab a seat in the 3 stages of Homeschool Masterclass so that you know where your kids are today. It's free and you can go through it at your own pace. But even if you were to burn through it, I think it's less than an hour. So you can go through the whole thing today and just be set up to be thinking through homeschooling differently. And that will unlock some areas of creativity that might be under lock and key right now. So have a great day. I'll see you in the next video. Yes, ketchup cookies are a thing. You can look them up and yeah, have fun. Grab a seat in the 3 stages of Homeschool Masterclass and I'll see you inside.